In the pantheon of movies named after songs, Jumpin' Jack Flash is number one in my heart. Well, not counting Rocket Man, and My Boyfriend's Back, and Love Potion number 9, and Only the Lonely, and Stand By Me, and Can't Buy Me Love, and The Final Countdown, and American Pie. Okay, there's more songs named after movies than I initially thought, but hey, this one is still great. It stars the one and only Whoopi Goldberg. When I was a kid, I knew Whoopi Goldberg from 3 things: Star Trek The Next Generation, Ghost, and Jumpin' Jack Flash, baby. Today, however, she's mostly known for being one of the talking heads on The View, but the less said about that show, the better. Still, I do bring it up because if you're much younger than me, that show has probably negatively influenced how you see her, and if that's true, then it might surprise you when I say that Whoopi Goldberg used to be really, really funny. All the way back in 1986, Whoopi was just entering her prime. It was a period of time that I like to call peak Whoopiness. In about a span of maybe 10 years, Whoopi gave us things like Ghost and Star Trek, yeah, but other defining Whoopi things like Sister Act, Soap Dish, and Made in America. However, in 1986, she was still pretty fresh to the world. This is when she gave us a movie that is not merely clever and fun, but that also went on to become one of those definitive 80s classics that kind of captures the time it was made in. A lot of 80s movies do this through pure aesthetics alone, like with hairstyles and clothes, but with Jumpin' Jack Flash, it was all about the technology. Computers. Lots and lots of clunky looking computers. And I say that with love. There was a charm to computers back then as these kind of quaint looking but still mysterious pieces of technology. They seemed to be able to do lots of different things. And nothing at the same time. Yeah, it was weird. But it was a great time to be alive. But anyway, the tech in this movie is central to its plot. Whoopi's character, Terry Doolittle, she works in a bank and via her computer meets a guy over the internet, the International Bank Transponder, calling himself Jumpin' Jack Flash. Title drop! And do we get a ubiquitous moment of the song being played? You bet we do. It's one of the best scenes in the movie, and just watching it, you can tell it's a lot of Whoopi just riffing and having fun. Anyway, this guy, Jack, is actually a British spy trapped in Eastern Europe. It makes sense because, the Cold War is still going on, and Russia was better known as an evil empire, which is another aspect of this movie that makes it totally 80s. But I don't mind at all. There was something pure about it. Back then, who the bad guys were in the world was far less confusing. It was just the Russians. In movie after movie, always the good old USSR. It's kind of an innocent feeling for me.
The KGB? The K mother GB?
Even though what she and Jack talk through isn't exactly the internet as we know it today, the movie did a pretty good job of capturing what text-based chat would be like in about 10 years, with maybe not the look, but the feel of AOL Instant Messenger. Pretty cool, eh? One of the highlights of their conversations has to be when Whoopi is required to use her keen intellect to break Jack's opening riddle, which will lead to his code key, which will then allow them to have secure conversations without worry of being traced. Anyway, when she figures out the key, which is actually the key of the song Jumpin' Jack Flash, I know, very cute, we get this overly elaborate graphical representation of entering another electronic domain, which is kind of a cliche of not just 80s movies, but 90s movies too, but in a most awesome way, of course. Then with Whoopi celebrating and the music celebrating along with her, it feels like we've won too. It's like a nice little bow on just about a perfect scene. This is just when the plot starts to get going, but a lot of the movie takes place here in this bank, with Whoopi simply talking back to the computer screen. And you think that would get boring, but no. The movie manages to keep it fresh and interesting because 1, Whoopi's charisma, and 2, through a little clever trick the movie plays by allowing Jack's voice to be heard in conjunction with the words on the screen.
You're on. How about Orlando's?
Not bad taste, Orlando. Sure. Anything else?
Sweet dreams.
When I was a kid, I thought she programmed his voice into the computer or something, because she's pretty technically savvy. But no, actually, early in the movie when she's in Jack's apartment, she hears his voice on his answering machine.
Hi, this is Jack. Sorry to have missed you, but if you leave your name and number, I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
And bingo! Now she knows what Jack sounds like. So now, whenever they're talking on the computer, Whoopi is hearing Jack, but only in her mind. It's a pretty clever way of making the conversations between them feel more personal and to actually develop Jack as a character. But other than his voice, it's how other people talk about Jack that keys us in on the type of guy he is, which again is pretty clever, like a backdoor into his personality. The mystery of who Jack is runs throughout the whole movie, and it's really exciting. It's like you build up an image in your mind of what Jack looks like, and when you finally see him, oh, but wait, maybe I shouldn't show you just in case you haven't seen the movie? Yeah? Nah, forget it. You've been warned. So close your eyes if you don't want to know what he looks like. So that's Jack. I have to say, his voice feels like it's coming out of the wrong body. At first. It's just the initial shock though, because he doesn't look like what you'd imagine. But after 30 years, I've gotten over it. As for the plot of the movie, Cold War spy thriller stuff, it's pretty straightforward. Not wholly original, but just good enough to keep you engaged and tense with the dangers that come with international espionage. The real draw here is Whoopi. This is her movie, through and through. The only reason anybody would probably think to watch it, even though the supporting cast is grade A excellence. I mean, you got John Lovitz, Phil Hartman, Stephen Collins, Carol Kane, James Belushi, John Wood, Annie Potts, Peter Getz, Jerome Crabbe, Roscoe Lee Brown, and Jonathan Pryce. But the heart of the movie is Whoopi Goldberg as Terry Doolittle. And it's not like the movie studio didn't know this either. All you have to do is take one glance at the movie poster to know what kind of movie you're getting into. It's gonna have lots of Whoopi, and it's gonna be wacky. The movie wastes no time in telling you this either, although it does try to trick you at first by giving us a slow opening with ominous music and props to make you think for a second you're heading into a different kind of movie, like Romancing the Stone maybe. But nope, it's Whoopi. This is actually one of my favorite performances from her. Funny, full of charisma. Not only was the wardrobe department a huge factor in defining her character with clothes that pop, like her yellow, red, and orange shoes, but Whoopi just has such an interesting look all by herself. However, and I hope I don't sound like a Pollyanna or anything, but because I'm old and crusty now, I must say, I do think she could have done without most of the swearing in this movie, and she swears a lot. But that's just a minor nitpick.
Sir, it's Tourette's syndrome.
Disturbing the peace.
It's an illness. People can't stop swearing. They don't even know they're doing it. She has it bad. She usually spits. Really, this is sweet talk for her.
After rewatching this movie, I looked it up to see if I could find any background info on it. And surprisingly, there is some. As it turns out, this was Penny Marshall's first time at directing. And I must be honest here, I didn't even know she directed it until writing this, but now that I know, I think she did a pretty good job as a first-time director, don't you? However, she wasn't the first director attached to this movie. The movie actually started out with Howard Zeif at the helm. He directed movies like Private Benjamin and My Girl, so I'm sure he would have done a good job, but of course, we wouldn't have gotten what we did. Also, and here's a bigger shock for you, this wasn't going to have Whoopi at first. It was actually conceived of for Shelley Long. Whoa, can you imagine that? I mean, I like Shelley Long, but it just would have been an entirely different movie. Anyway, the movie came out and the critics mostly smashed it, even the ones I respect like Siskel and Ebert. But I don't always see eye to eye with them, so whatever. It doesn't change my opinion. However, despite all those negative reviews, when the movie came out, people liked it, and the movie was a hit. And it just goes to prove all the more. Jumpin' Jack Flash is a gas, 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 baby.